Assalamu alaikum and very warm welcome to all of you again to the public policy analysis class. This is the start of lecture 4. I hope just like I said in previous lectures that hopefully it has been an enjoyable ride for you till now. I've certainly enjoyed the interaction with you. I've certainly enjoyed the teaching and I hope it carries on like this. This is basically the theoretical part that we are covering for the moment, and this lecture and another lecture, once we are done with lecture 4 and lecture 5 and perhaps a bit of lecture 6, I'm sure we'd be over with the theoretical part, and then we'll go to those a bit more technical stuff like cost benefit analysis and internal rate of returns and that sort of stuff. Then obviously you'll have after lecture 6 you'll start having your assignments, you start having your homeworks, there would be quizzes, there would be discussion boards, questions. So as they say that this is where the real fun begins. I hope till now that you guys have enjoyed this and will keep enjoying it. So let's start with lecture number 4. A brief summary of what we did in the previous lecture, what we studied in the previous lecture, as always, as is the standard operating procedure. First, few things that I'll mention. I won't go through everything. We read an article on Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline. That was by Dr. Farooq Salim, and we went through some of the stuff, and it was basically an example, one of the many that you will be going through in this course, that tells you different facets of public policy. And as we went through it, we saw why it was a bad one, not a good one. And it was meant more for self-interest, in just to anoint oneself in terms of politics rather than being designed for the welfare of the people. Then we discussed in brief the models of public policy. We said that there are generally 8 models. I believe we discussed 4 of them and are left with the other 4, which we will discuss in this lecture. And then we discussed so these were the 4 lectures, or these were the 4 models that we went through. So let's move ahead and see what the other 4 have to say. The first one in today's lecture is about the group theory, about groups that seek to maximize their gain, but in maximizing their gain they trample upon the rights of other people and leave them more miserable. So in an economy, in certain time, in a certain geographic location, in a certain place, you'd find certain group interests. Now, how do they come about? How do they perceive something in common? What their common interest is? That's another story, but we won't go through those things. That's for another class or for another subject. What we are interested in is that there are groups. There are certain groups in an economy. There are certain groups in society that have their own personal agenda. Whatever they come up with, whatever they can think in terms of a public policy, a specific public policy, if they can advocate it, if they can affect the course of a public policy, it is basically not for the welfare of the people. Most of the times you find that it's for their personal gain. They stand to gain the most from if the policies that they are advocating to be implemented are implemented in reality. Those groups are domestic as well as international. Now, make this distinction clear. Those groups are domestic as well as international. ये जिन ग्रुप्स की बात करें, ग्रुप प्रेशर की, हम तो ज़्यादातर यही जानते हैं कि जी ज़्यादातर जो बात होती है कि डोमेस्टिक प्रेशर ग्रुप्स हैं. मसलन डोमेस्टिक यहाँ पे एक प्रेशर ग्रुप आप कह सकते हैं यूनियंस का हो गया, मुख्तलिफ किस्म की यूनियंस हो गया, या कोई भी एक जत्था लोगों का इकट्ठा हो गया किसी खास डिमांड के लिए, जिम्मेदार हो गए, काश्तकार हो गए, सब जिनकी एक पूरा ग्रुप इकट्ठा हो गया, उनकी कोई खास डिमांड है। लेकिन जिसने भी पाकिस्तान की तारीख पढ़ी है या पाकिस्तान की तारीख से वाकिफ़ है, वो ये भी जानता है कि यहाँ पे बहुत सारी बार से इन्वॉल्वमेंट भी रही है, बहुत सारा बार से प्रेशर भी रहा है। वो प्रेशर जो होता है वो इंटरनेशनल ग्रुप्स की तरफ से आता है, वो डोमेस्टिक ग्रुप्स की तरफ से यानी अंदर से नहीं आता, वो बाहर से आता है। जो बाहर से प्रेशर आता है वो इंटरनेशनल ग्रुप्स का प्रेशर होता है। सो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ प्रेशर इज व्हाट काइंड ऑफ प्रेशर डज an international group assert? Their concentration is usually on large scale projects where there is quite a substantial profit margin to be had. Now, this is where we go in a bit of economics. I won't discuss it in detail, but when you are talking about group, especially a large group, there is little to gain if you have to pursue something small, on a small scale. So, what these groups tend to do, what their the standard operating procedure is that they pursue larger aims, larger projects, where every one of the member stands to gain substantially. Because look, it doesn't make sense to spend your time, to spend your energy advocating for something that a group has little to gain from. एक ग्रुप जो है, अगर ख़ास तौर पे उसकी अगर मेंबरान की तादाद बहुत ज़्यादा है, वो पूरे मुल्क में फैले हुए, वो एक छोटी मोटी पॉलिसी पे मुश्किल कभी हाथ नहीं डालेंगे। नॉर्मली आप देखेंगे कि वो किसी बड़ी पॉलिसी की तरफ जाएंगे कि इसको जी इम्प्लीमेंट किया जाए, ये ठीक है, इससे फलाह बहबूद में इजाफा होगा। वजह उसकी है कि जब इतने ज़्यादा एक ग्रुप में लोग होते हैं तो इसकी कोई मंतक नहीं बनती कि वो एक छोटा सा प्रोजेक्ट परस्यू करें, उसमें फ़ायदा बहुत कम होता है। अब मिसाल के तौर पे अगर मैं ये कहूँ कि जी एक 10 बंदों का ग्रुप है, तो 10 बंदों का ग्रुप जो होगा, जाहिर है अगर उसके सामने 2 प्रोजेक्ट्स पड़े हुए हैं जो कि 2 ऐसी पॉलिसीज़ हैं जो कि उनके ख्याल में इम्प्लीमेंट की जा सकती है, हुकूमत जो है उसको लागू कर सकती है। एक में फ़ायदा हर मेंबर को पहुँचेगा तकरीबन 1000 रुपये का, और दूसरा एक प्रोजेक्ट है जिसमें उनको फ़ायदा मुश्किल से पहुंचेगा 400-500 रुपये का। आपके ख्याल में वो कौन सा प्रोजेक्ट परस्यू करेंगे? आपके ख्याल में वो कौन से पब्लिक पॉलिसी को उसके तर्जुमानी करेंगे कि जी ये पॉलिसी जो है इसको लागू होना चाहिए? जाहिर है वो 1000 रुपये वाली होगी, क्योंकि 1000 रुपये और फिर 500-400 रुपये, इसमें आधे से ज़्यादा का मार्जिन, आधे से ज़्यादा का मार्जिन है। तो अगर पूरा एक ग्रुप इकट्ठा हो गया है और अपना टाइम लगा रहा है उसमें और अपनी कोशिश कर रहा है कि एक पॉलिसी लागू हो जाए, तो फिर जाहिर है आखिर में वो ये भी चाहेंगे कि इसका कोई नतीजा बरामद हो। ज़्यादातर इन ग्रुप्स की जो एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं उसके आखिरकार का नतीजा यही होता है कि वो चाहते हैं कि कोई इसका एक फाइनेंशियल रिवॉर्ड हो, उसकी कोई एक मॉनेटरी रिवॉर्ड हो, कि उसमें हमें कोई मुनाफा हो। और जब मुनाफे की बात आती है, जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि वो फिर उस पॉलिसी की तरफ जाएंगे, उस पॉलिसी की तरफ देखेंगे, उस पॉलिसी की तर्जुमानी करने की कोशिश करेंगे जिसमें फ़ायदा ज़्यादा हो, जिसमें मौक़े ज़्यादा हों और जिसमें मज़ीद आगे बढ़ने के चांसेस ज़्यादा हों। नाउ दिस वाज more about domestic ones, the domestic groups. Let's talk about international players. What do international players want? What do international groups do? Now, again, when you're talking about international groups, make a distinction between those who want purely financial, those who have a purely financial interest in the country, like Pakistan, and those who don't necessarily have a financial interest, but their interests are otherwise. Their interest in foreign policy, their interest is in getting a stronghold over here, their interest is in affecting the course of events and having a strong presence. What better example is there than the Western nations who advocate a certain stance, like the United States. It has had an ever presence since I think it's since Pakistan's birth. It has been a prominent actor in Pakistan's affairs, and led by America, there is a whole group of nations. You would see most of them Western nations that advocate a certain stance, advocate a certain policy. So they form a group. It's an international group which tends to affect the course of things, which tends to now there when I'm talking about country level, when I'm talking about country policy, see it's not about financial interest per se. It's more about gaining a stronghold, having a strong say in policy formulation. So if, for example, somebody is in government over here, what that group, international group led by the United States, would like them to do is to influence them that look, you have designed a certain policy or you are trying to do something that we believe is not good. So what they try to do is put pressure upon us, or put pressure upon the governing class, the people who govern us, not to pursue that policy. And they have the specific tools to pursue their interests. पाकिस्तान के ऊपर इतना कर्जा है कि जब तक अमेरिका की बात नहीं मानेगा तो उसको कर्जा मिलना मुश्किल हो जाएगा. This is not just true for the United States of America. This is even true for Britain. This is even true for France, the European Union. If you don't listen to them, then it will be difficult for us to keep up, to keep paying our debt, and to take on more debt, get access to credit, more credit. I'll give you a very recent example. कहते हैं बात से बात चल निकली है, तो मैं आपको एक मिसाल देता हूँ. अभी आपने सुना होगा कि एक बड़ी डिबेट चली थी पिछले साल जब ये नई गवर्नमेंट नवाज शरीफ साहब की आई थी, तो उसमें एक बड़ी डिबेट चली थी कि जी कुछ अरसे बाद इनको GSP प्लस का एक स्टेटस मिला था यूरोपियन यूनियन की तरफ से. What basically GSP plus was that it gave a certain favorable treatment to the exports. Favorable treatment in the sense that the Pakistani exports were exempted from to a certain degree from taxes, from tariffs. Tariffs are kind of taxes that are on those goods that are coming into the country, imports to the European Union and exports of Pakistan in this case. So what they did was that the European Union gave Pakistan a GSP plus status, and the basic was that all right, you can export more, maybe it will give your exports a boost if we tax it a bit lower. Hasn't happened much yet. There hasn't been much activity on that front, and there are certain reasons for it which again can be covered in public policy. I won't cover them here, but the thing is that in return, they ask for certain favors. For example, I can quote one that was delaying the death penalty of hardened criminals in Karachi. Quite a few of them were on death payroll and supposed to be hanged by now, but it hasn't happened because the European Union is strictly against it. So by delaying those death penalties, there was quite a bit of pressure on the Pakistani government. They granted the GSP plus status in return to Pakistan. But then, as I talked in the last lecture about the trade-offs, trade-off is that some of those most hardened criminals who are supposed to be hanged by now are still living amongst us, and probably they'd escape the jail someday and be amongst us. So there's a trade-off for you of pressure group. और किस किस्म के प्रेशर ग्रुप्स हो सकते हैं? बहुत किस्म के हो सकते हैं. अब ये हम आगे जाके थोड़ा सा इसको देखेंगे. They seek out direct relations with power brokers or those who have the power to affect the course of things. I think we've discussed this just in the context, especially in the context of relations between Pakistan and the United States. These relations are normally based on the principle of financial profit sharing or some future benefit. Now that is one aspect of it. As I said, you have to differentiate between the financial motive of the groups and the non-financial motives. So I'm over here, I just talked about the financial one. Financial के अलावा भी हो सकता है. We talked about the European Union and GSP Plus और उसके लिए उनको क्या फेवर देनी पड़ी. I just discussed that. Some examples of internal and external pressure groups. Exporter lobby, ये एक इंटरनल प्रेशर ग्रुप है. मैं जब आई रिमेंबर कि जब मैं फाइनेंस डिवीजन में काम कर रहा था तो वी यूज्ड टू सी क्वाइट अ बिट ऑफ देम. ये एक्सपोर्टर्स की पूरी एक लॉबी है जो कि गवर्नमेंट के पास आते हैं, वजीर ख़जाना से मिलते हैं और लोगों से मिलते हैं जो कि डिसीजन मेकर्स होते हैं. इनका मेन इनकी डिमांड ये होती है कि जी पैसे की कीमत, जो कदर कीमत है वो कम से कम रहे. वजह उसकी यह है कि जब पैसे की जितनी कदर कीमत कम होगी तो उनके ख्याल में एटलीस्ट कि यहाँ से हम लोग आसानी से माल बाहर भिजवा सकते हैं, हमारे माल की डिमांड ज़्यादा होगी. इन अदर वर्ड्स, आवर एक्सपोर्ट्स विल गेट अ बूस्ट. It's a failed policy. It hasn't been the most successful policies in the world, but it still keeps being continued on and on and on. Every government persists with this policy for reasons that are beyond understanding. Not beyond understanding, honestly. A lot of people understand why this goes on because, as I said, it's a whole pressure lobby. It's a whole pressure group, and then there are some other reasons, but there is little doubt that it hasn't helped a lot as a public policy, but it keeps being persisted with by every government. And one of the reasons is that there is a very strong export lobby over here that wants to keep the value of Pakistani rupee against other currencies like dollar, pound as low as possible, so that perhaps our exports can get a boost. It doesn't seem to be happening. As I said, it's a failed policy. I'm talking from an economist point of view. I'm talking from a realistic point of view. It hasn't happened. It won't be very successful. But unfortunately, we keep persisting with it. Then the landed lobby. Those who have large tracts of land, because land reforms, if it did happen in the era of Ayub Khan and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, but most of the analysts, most of the researchers, what they found is that they were not so successful. People were good enough, those large landlords were good enough to come around it, to find ways to beat those reforms and keep the large tracts of land in their possession. So it's a whole landed lobby, those who possess the large tracts of land. Now, what do they lobby for? Just as an example, one thing that they lobby for is that no reforms related to lands which would bifurcate their land or maybe reduce their holdings, they come along. Quite a few of the landed aristocracy or what we call landlords are sitting in our National Assembly too, so you can bet that it won't pass over there. What else they lobby for? Another example is subsidies, wheat subsidy. गंदम पे जो सब्सिडी दी जाती है या उसकी सपोर्ट प्राइस की सूरत में कि उसकी सपोर्ट प्राइस अगर इस साल 800 रुपये है, अगले साल 900 रुपये डिक्लेयर कर दी जाती है एज अ पब्लिक पॉलिसी. तो ये देखें, ये सिर्फ एक ग्रुप का इंटरेस्ट है. ठीक है, वो कहते हैं कि जी ये पैदावार बढ़ाने के लिए ताकि गंदम की पैदावार मजीद बढ़े. गंदम की पैदावार बढ़ तो जाएगी और बढ़ती भी है, लेकिन बुनियादी तौर पर आप ये देखें कि फ़ायदा किसको होता है? जिसके पास एक ज़मीन का एक बड़ा टुकड़ा है या फिर एक किसान जिसके पास छोटा टुकड़ा है. फ़ायदा किसको होगा अगर कीमत गंदम की 800 से 900 रुपए तक चली जाती है मन, फॉर एग्जांपल पर मन अगर चली जाती है? जाहिर है उसको फ़ायदा होगा जिसने गंदम की पैदावार जिसकी ज़मीन पे ज़्यादा है, और गंदम की पैदावार उस ज़मीन पे ज़्यादा होगी जिसके पास सबसे ज़्यादा ज़मीन है. सो ऑब्वियसली this kind of policy is one of the aim of this kind of policy is to help the financial help of the landed lobby, and that happens a lot in Pakistan, especially आप जो पिछली हुकूमत है पाकिस्तान पीपल पार्टी की, इनके दौर में ये बहुत ज़्यादा चलता है, क्योंकि क्वाइट अ फ्यू ऑफ देम आर पार्ट ऑफ लैंडेड एरिस्टोक्रेसी, कि वो देखें उनकी एक पॉलिसी है कि हमेशा गंदम की कीमत, सपोर्ट प्राइस जो है बढ़ाते रहते हैं, उससे महंगाई का एक तूफान आता है। लेकिन इन चीज़ों की अनफॉर्चुनेटली हुक्मरानों को ज़्यादा परवाह नहीं होती। जहाँ पे बात आ गई अपनी ज़ात की और अपनी ज़ात को फ़ायदा पहुँचाने की, तो वहाँ पे फिर लोगों की फलाह बहबूद की बात कम ही की जाती है। द प्राइस सपोर्ट लॉबी, जैसा कि मैंने आपको कहा कि आपको मैंने एक मिसाल दी कि ये जिनके पास बड़े बड़े ज़रई रकबे हैं, वो इस चीज़ के लिए लॉबी करते हैं कि गंदम की कीमत बढ़ाई जाए। इसी तरह लेकिन सिर्फ वो ये एक लॉबी नहीं है। मैंने आपको एक्सपोर्टर्स का कहा, फिर पूरा एक ऑयल माफिया है जो कि अपने कमीशन के लिए हुकूमत उनको पर लीटर पे उनका एक कमीशन मुकर्रर होता है, उनकी हमेशा से ये कोशिश होती है कि उन पर टैक्स कम से कम लगे और कमीशन जो है उनका ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हो। इस चीज़ के लिए वो लॉबी करते रहते हैं। और as I said before, they know a lot of people in power, know a lot of people in the governing circles. They have contacts with them, and they know what the policy makers are thinking and what they are intending to do. So then they run around trying to stop those policies that they believe would hamper their interest. So it's part of price support lobby. The पार्ट डी, द ऑयल कंपनी लॉबी। अब माइंड यू अगेन देखें, इसमें वही डिस्टिंक्शन करें कि एक होती है कि अंदरूनी, एक होती है बैरूनी लॉबी। अब ऑयल कंपनी की लॉबीज जो हैं ज़्यादातर वो कौन सी हैं, वो उसमें बैरूनी भी आ जाती है, अंदरूनी भी आ जाती है। अब पाकिस्तान स्टेट ऑयल है, वो तो एक हुकूमत का इदारा है, तो उसमें शायद ज़्यादा लॉबिंग की ज़रूरत भी नहीं पड़ती, क्योंकि पेट्रोल की कीमत अगर बढ़ा दी तो ज़ाहिर मुनाफा ज़्यादा। But those oil companies, oil marketing companies and big oil companies like Shell, like Caltex, these are international companies. उनके लिए भी जाहिर है अगर वो लॉबिंग करते हैं तो इसीलिए करते हैं कि उनकी कंपनी को यहाँ पे फ़ायदा हो, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा उनका प्रॉफिट मार्जिन हो जाए और उनको ज़्यादा बचता रहे। सो दीज आर सम ऑफ द लॉबी ग्रुप्स that I discussed, those that are a part of the group theory, are part of groups, specific interest groups that are part of any society or an economy. Next is the elite theory. Remember what we said last time about elites. मैंने आपको ये कहा था कि elite जो होते हैं ना, अगर आप कह रहे हैं हम बात करते हैं elite class की, तो एलीट क्लास का ये मतलब नहीं होता। इट्स नॉट नेसेसरली कि ये जो सबसे यहाँ पे अमीर लोग हैं वो ये एलीट हैं। what we tend to suppose from elite people is, or elite classes, that they are the ones who are calling the shots. They are the ones who have a say in policy making. In short, they are very influential people. That is why they are an elite class. They can affect the course of things. Now, remember that we discussed about the policy being demand oriented. In other words, there is a demand for specific action by the people which resultantly leads to a policy. But in reality, some policies are specifically designed to benefit a certain group of individuals known as the elite. In other words, policies are not designed from the perspective of ordinary people, but from the needs of elite people. अब देखिए यहाँ पे कितना फ़र्क आ गया। हमने बात की थी कि पॉलिसीज किस लिए डिज़ाइन की जाती है कि अवामी फलाह बहबूद के लिए। वहाँ पे कोई ना कोई एक डिमांड होती है, लोगों की डिमांड है कि इलाके में गैस हो, लोगों की डिमांड है कि गलियाँ पक्की हों, लोगों की डिमांड है कि पानी पीने का साफ पानी हो, लोगों की डिमांड है कि बिजली हो। अब ये जिसे कहेंगे आप, ये एक अवामी डिमांड है, एक अवामी मुतालबा है। बट इन द केस ऑफ एलीट्स, it's not people per se, it's not the population per se. In the case of elites, it's that specific, elites are also a group. So it's the elite group. And most of the times what they do is they conceive of something, they conceive of a self-interest and come up with this idea that this should be the public policy that should be pursued. One difference between the group theory and elite theory is that elite the people who belong to this elite class have the power to enforce it, to push that policy. In the groups, that lobby groups, they don't necessarily have the power to push policies. They are influential, but they have to lobby. जो ग्रुप में लोग होते हैं ना, ग्रुप, हम लॉबीज की अभी बात कर रहे थे ग्रुप थ्योरी में, उसमें आप ये एक चीज़ ये नोटिस कीजिएगा कि उनको थोड़ी सी भागदौड़ करनी पड़ती है. किसी को फ़ायदा पहुंचा दिया, किसी को भागदौड़ कर ली, किसी की मिन्नत समाजत कर ली. एलिट्स के मामले में ये चीज़ नहीं होगी, आप ये नहीं देखेंगे. नॉर्मली जो होता है वो ये होता है कि वो बस उन्होंने एक ग्रुप ने मिलकर डिसाइड कर लिया एलिट्स के कि ये पॉलिसी है जो हमारे लिए अच्छी है, उसका हमें फ़ायदा है, तो दे पुश इट. वो उसको ज़बरदस्ती उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. काफ़ी दफ़ा कामयाब भी हो जाते हैं, सम टाइम नाकाम भी हो जाते हैं. बट elites have a power that the group people don't have. They can push policies. So they are demand oriented too. इनकी भी डिमांड है, but not from a people's perspective, not from a welfare perspective, but from a very narrow perspective of their own interests. So their demand, the nature of their demand is a bit different. In fact, is a lot different than the nature of the demand of the whole population. Not surprisingly, the results are also pretty different, in fact very different. A relevant question: why do elites need policies for themselves only? Financial motive aside, it's a lot about maintaining the status quo and preserving their own culture. Thus, it's evolutionary in nature. ये एक सवाल है जो जिसने काफ़ी दफ़ा बहुत से लोगों ने, ख़ास तौर पे फ़िलासफ़ी जो पढ़ते हैं या फिर जो सोशल थ्योरी पढ़ते हैं, सोशियोलॉजी पढ़ते हैं, इस चीज़ को काफ़ी मैंने देखा है कि डिस्कस किया गया है. और आपकी जो टेक्स्ट बुक की रीडिंग्स है उसमें अगर आप पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें भी ये चीज़ आएगी कि एक सवाल ये है कि क्या एलीट्स जो हैं वो क्यों इतना वो कोशिश करते हैं एक पॉलिसी जो है जो कि वो समझते हैं कि हमारे फेवर में है, तो उसको पुश करने की क्यों कोशिश करते हैं, क्या वजह. फाइनेंशियल मोटिव्स असाइड, फाइनेंशियल मोटिव तो है ही है, मतलब अपने लिए पैसे कमाने वाली, अपने लिए अपनी वेल्थ बनाने के लिए वो एक मोटिव तो है ही है. लेकिन उससे ज़्यादा बहुत से लोगों ने इस चीज़ को एक्सप्लेन किया है कि वो अपनी जो जगह है, जो उनकी कीमत है, जो उनकी एक स्टैंडिंग है सोसाइटी में, उसको हर कीमत पे बरकरार रखना चाहते हैं, ना सिर्फ अपने लिए बल्कि आने वाले अपनी नस्लों के लिए भी. एंड फॉर दैट दे डू एवरीथिंग. वन ऑफ देम इज पुशिंग पब्लिक पॉलिसीज, स्पेसिफिक पॉलिसीज दैट फेवर देम. वो इसलिए बट दे बिकॉज दे वांट टू गेट अ स्ट्रांग होल्ड where they are standing as part of an elite. It is in their interest. In fact, it might be their biggest interest to maintain that status quo. That if they are part of elite, they would also like their children to be part of elite too. And look at it from an evolutionary perspective. This is natural. You can blame them for many things, but honestly, at least I don't blame them for that. I don't know, maybe if I or you were in their place, we would probably have done the same because it's evolution, it's nature. एक बंदा जो कि कोठी में रहता है, एक बड़ी कोठी में या बंगले में रहता है, वो ये नहीं चाहेगा कि मैं जो है झुग्गी में चला जाऊँ या फिर एक छोटे से मकान में 5 मरले के मकान में चला जाऊँ. दैट इज़ नेचुरल. और वो उस चीज़ को मेंटेन करने के लिए वो हर चीज़ करेगा, इस अपने वो उस स्टेटस को मेंटेन करने के लिए. दैट इज़ एवोल्यूशन इन प्ले. It's we are not going to discuss evolution, no. We are not going to discuss Darwin, no. But remember that is what is called evolution or evolutionary perspective. Every one of us has that perspective. It's inside us. Every parent would like his child to maintain the same status that he has, or even go beyond it. Achieve more, but no parent would like his offspring to be lesser than him. That is evolutionary, and that's one of the biggest that probably answers our questions. The question that I just ask that why do elite need policies for themselves only? Elites are not all alike, but they share similarities. एलिट्स में भी जैसा कि हमने ग्रुप्स में डिस्टिंक्शन की थी कि कुछ डोमेस्टिक होते हैं, कुछ इंटरनेशनल होते हैं, एलिट्स भी जो है सारे एक जैसे नहीं होते. जैसे कि मैंने कहा कुछ के पास पैसे की ताकत होती है, लेकिन कुछ ऐसे एलिट्स भी हैं जिनके पास पैसा नहीं होता, उनके पास इख्तियार की ताकत होती है. तो उन चीज़ों पे तकिया करके वो पॉलिसीज डिज़ाइन करते हैं और उनको पुश करते हैं. सो एलिट्स, all of them are not alike. Some examples, some very pertinent examples that I've digged out, I've thought of. Halliburton grew up in the United States. मैंने आपको कहा था ना कि आपको ऐसी मिसालें भी दूंगा जो कि सिर्फ पाकिस्तान से ना हो, बाहर से भी हों. Halliburton is a very famous example, perhaps one of the most pertinent examples. What is Halliburton? You all must have heard of Dick Cheney. He was the former United States Vice President in the tenure of George Bush from 2000 to 2008. He was the Vice President of the United States. Now, this guy represented just not the United States, but also his group, his business group. It's called the Halliburton Group. And it deals in a lot of things. It deals in oil, it deals in big contracts, construction. So it does a lot of things. Dick Cheney, the United States Vice President, was a big part of those, and still is, I believe. Halliburton is part of what people have, the US commentators have dubbed as the military-industrial complex. There is this, at least that is the theory, is that there goes this theory that the industry and the military, they in conjunction form a powerful group, an elite group, and what they do is that they are always seeking contracts, they are always seeking ways to enhance their prestige, to enhance their footing, and to enhance their stranglehold. So Halliburton Group in the United States, we are going to hear more about it. You are going to read a short article about it, perhaps in this lecture, that will tell you how much it earned in the war in Iraq in 2003 when the US invaded Iraq. And part of the reason that they earned so much was that they easily got the contracts due to Dick Cheney being the vice president. So there's a elite group for you. Major party heads in Pakistan. मेरे ख्याल में इस पे तो कोई इतनी, ये आप सब बेहतर जानते होंगे कि ये भी एक एलीट का हिस्सा है, जो जितने भी ये पार्टी फिगर्स हैं पाकिस्तान में, जो कि खुद पार्टीज को हेड करते हैं, खुद पार्टी के सरबराह हैं, और फिर उनके बच्चे भी जो हैं, या उनके दोस्त हो गए, या उनके बहुत जो करीबी रिश्तेदार हो गए, वही पार्टियों पे कब्जा करके बैठे हुए हैं, और पार्टी पे अपनी उन्होंने स्ट्रैंगल होल्ड नहीं छोड़नी, किसी ना किसी तरीके से उन्होंने पार्टी पे अपनी ग्रिप कायम रखनी है. मुख्तलिफ सियासी पार्टियों से होंगे, लेकिन ग्रुप एक ही होगा, सबका इंटरेस्ट शेयर्ड होता है. कोई भी उनमें से अपने जितना भी उनके पास है, माली उससे देख लें, इस्तेदाद देख लें, या फिर डिसीजन मेकिंग में देख लें, कोई पॉलिसी के लिहाज से बात करते हैं अगर हम, उसमें उनकी जो say है, their stranglehold, they wouldn't like to leave it, they would like to maintain it, and the easiest way to do it is to be in power. That is why they all clamor so much for being in the government. ये एक वजह है कि आपको ये पता चलेगा कि हर बंदा चाहता है कि इनमें से कि वो हुकूमत में हो, कोई वजीर हो, कोई मुशीर हो, because it gives them that chance that if they are not already a part of elite, they will someday become a part of elite. It's a golden opportunity for them. स्विट्ज़रलैंड डेवोस फोरम फॉर बिजनेस, हर साल स्विट्ज़रलैंड में एक शहर है डेवोस, उधर काफ़ी मशहूर एक बिजनेस फोरम होता है, बिजनेस का इजलास होता है. नाउ द पीपल दैट गैदर ओवर देयर आर quite a few heads of state, but the real people that form that elite, that group of elite, are the business people, big business people that deal in billions of dollars. Some of the wealthiest people around the world. Bill Gates, Microsoft's founder, Warren Buffett, Carlos Slim, and other billionaires from around the world. So it's an elite group of billionaires that is the main presence in that forum. So there's another elite group for you. Public choice theory, the second last one, I believe. It's more about self-interested individuals. यहाँ पे हम ग्रुप से और एलीट ग्रुप से हम बाहर आ गए. यहाँ पे हम ज़्यादातर बात करते हैं इंडिविजुअल्स की, खुद से एक बंदे की या 2-3 लोगों की. ग्रुप्स भी आते हैं इसमें, लेकिन जब हम सिर्फ पब्लिक चॉइस थ्योरी की बात करते हैं, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट पब्लिक चॉइस थ्योरी, it's mainly about individuals who are pursuing a self-interest. They can make decisions collectively or alone, depending upon the situation and opportunity to make personal gains. So again, here you are, the personal gains, the self-interest thing. They see that opportunity. They look at an opportunity and see that perhaps there is some gain in this kind of opportunity. So let's go ahead with it. And then they also visualize that whether they'd be okay going alone, would they benefit the most by going alone, or would they benefit the most by sharing the spoils with somebody else. So once that decision is made, they go ahead with it. More to do with economics, where it is now taught as a subfield and has vast applications. Economics में public choice theory जो है वो पूरी एक field है, और इसकी applications बहुत vast है. In fact, there is a whole journal that is published in the name of public choice theory. It's called the Journal of Public Choice, I believe, and there are quite a few good articles in it. I've read some. I'm not a regular follower, but it's a pretty good theory. And it has pretty good applications. The self-interested individual who benefited the society. अच्छा, ये concept है कि जो काफ़ी पुराना है. हमने बात की थी, अगर आपको याद हो, एडम स्मिथ की, who is normally hailed as the father of modern economics. उसने ये बात की थी कि एक इंडिविजुअल, सेल्फ इंटरेस्टेड इंडिविजुअल जो है वो सोसाइटी को कैसे हेल्प कर सकता है. उसका जो सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट है, उसका जो अपना ज़ाती मकसद है, वो अल्टीमेटली सोसाइटी उसमें कैसी, सोसाइटी जो है उससे कैसे फ़ायदा उठा सकती है, लोग उससे कैसे फ़ायदा उठा सकते हैं. लेट्स रीड थ्रू दिस. This thought goes back to Adam Smith. He stated that when individuals pursue their own self-interest, it ends up helping the society. He gave the example of a butcher who sells meat not out of intuition or a charity motive, but out of self-interest. He knows there is demand for meat, and he sells meat to fulfill the demand. So people get meat and he gets money in return. Thus there is general satisfaction or general welfare. They can notice that the end result is satisfaction or welfare. Adam Smith gave this example in order to demonstrate what he was saying about self-interest being beneficial to the society. He demonstrated it by an example of a butcher, and he said that he doesn't sell meat out of his thinking about charity, that this is charity, come and get the meat for free. No, he is smart enough to realize that there is demand for meat in the society, and there is obviously there is something for me to gain by selling the meat. So what happens from the society's perspective is that there is a person who is selling meat which they want, and from the butcher's perspective, what he is acquiring is that what he is doing is that he is fulfilling a society's demand for meat, selling it and getting money in return. In the end, both sections are happy. So Smith, when he talked about this self-interest, basically what he was talking about was that how the self-interest of many sections of the societies, the various diverse sections of the society, when they come up, when they meet, it ends up helping the society rather than harming it. Where things differ from public policy theory is that it's not necessarily demand that participants fulfill, but rather their own motives that have nothing to do with demand of the populace. Notice the symmetry here, notice the same thing that we just read in the elite theory, that it's not per se the demand of population, but it's their own demand. So where a public choice theory, where individuals who pursue their self-interest, that ends up hurting the economy, ends up hurting the society, and ends up decreasing the welfare. It differs from Adam Smith's self-interest motive is, where it differs from Adam Smith's self-interest motive is the fact that it's not the demand of the society, but it's the demand of a few individuals or one individuals, that he sees an opportunity to make some gain, welfare gain, be it in money or otherwise, and he ends up pursuing that motive. So if the motive being pursued is not from the point of view of society, if the society doesn't have great demand for it, it ends up hurting the society more rather than helping it. A lot of public choice theory is about the government and its people that find certain opportunities to pursue their self-interest. जैसे आगे हम शायद कुछ मिसालें भी पढ़ेंगे पब्लिक चॉइस थ्योरी की, once we go into some of the technicalities of these kind of theories and some example, some maybe computations, we'd see that it's a lot about government, its representatives, and how they end up pursuing their own self-interest to the detriment of the people. We have discussed before that a government has the legitimacy to do certain stuff like raising revenue through taxes, and that its presence also owes to private sector limitations. अब हुकूमत की हमने बात की कि उसके पास एक legitimate claim होता है, उसके पास एक कानूनी इख्तियार होता है जो कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर के पास नहीं होता. मिसाल के तौर पे हुकूमत टैक्स लागू कर सकती है, प्राइवेट सेक्टर नहीं कर सकता. तो इस इख्तियार को इस्तेमाल करके हुकूमत जो है अपनी एक लेजिटिमेसी जो होती है, एक अपनी उसको कायम रखती है. Remember, as we said in one of the previous lecture, that there is a government, good or bad, there is a government. Modern nation states have governments, and when there is a government, those who work for the government, they will have an opportunity to make something out of it. That is a lot of what the public choice theory is about. It also owes to the private sector limitations. Government की presence जो है, private sector जो होता है उसके चूँकि resources limited होते हैं, वो हर जगह नहीं पहुँच सकता. तो इस फिर वहाँ पे हुकूमत जो है नेचुरल, उसकी एक नेचुरल मोनोपोली होती है, उसका एक नेचुरल स्ट्रॉन्ग होल्ड होता है कि जहाँ पे प्राइवेट सेक्टर आता ही नहीं है तो वहाँ पे ज़ाहिर है हुकूमत होगी. मिसाल के तौर पे ऐसे इलाके बलूचिस्तान में और फाटा में कि जहाँ पे कोई भी प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टर नहीं जाएगा क्योंकि वहाँ पे सिक्योरिटी के हालात ही इतने बुरे हैं कि कोई भी जाना नहीं पसंद करेगा. इवन हुकूमत के लोग जाना नहीं पसंद करते, तो प्राइवेट वालों को तो छोड़ें. सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट इन दीज काइंड ऑफ केसेस द गवर्नमेंट इट बाय डिफॉल्ट टेक्स ओवर. वहाँ पे और कोई नहीं होता सिवाय हुकूमत के, क्योंकि प्राइवेट सेक्टर इज कम्प्लीटली एब्सेंट. व्हेन गवर्नमेंट गेट्स इन्वॉल्व्ड, you can bet that there will be opportunities. This is where the public officials find opportunities to curry a favor for their own self-interest. For example, government give billions of rupees in subsidies every year for those who have the power to release money. This is a good chance to gain a favor. When governments get involved, जो कि मैं बात करता कि जहाँ पे हुकूमत आ जाए तो वहाँ पे हुकूमत के लिए काम करने वाले के लिए भी जिसके पास इख्तियार होता है मौका है. अब हुकूमत अपने इख्तियार कैसे इस्तेमाल करती है? ज़ाहिर डिपार्टमेंट्स होते हैं. पिछले लेक्चर में या उससे पहले वाले लेक्चर में मिसाल दी मैंने एक कि हुकूमत किस तरह अपना काम चलाती है. मिनिस्ट्रीज होते हैं, डिविजन्स होते हैं, उसमें अथॉरिटी डेलीगेट की जाती है. अथॉरिटी उन लोगों के पास होती है जो कि पोजीशंस पे बैठे होते हैं. तो उनमें से अगर कोई अपने लिए मौका तलाश करना चाहे, इतना मुश्किल काम नहीं है. जो कि बाइख्तियार लोग जिसे आप कहते हैं, जिनके पास इख्तियार होता है कोई एक पॉलिसी के हवाले से, हुकूमत ने एक पॉलिसी चलें ठीक है डिसाइड कर ली, हुकूमत ने कहा कि जी ये पॉलिसी होगी, लेकिन उसको इम्प्लीमेंट कौन करेगा? ज़ाहिर है हुकूमत के नुमाइंदे करेंगे जो कि मुख्तलिफ मिनिस्ट्रीज़ में बैठे हैं, मुख्तलिफ डिविजन्स में बैठे हैं. तो सपोज फॉर द सेक ऑफ आर्ग्यूमेंट दैट द गवर्नमेंट okays a grant of billions of rupees in the public sector development project. This is part of the budget, and they keep a specific amount in the budget for public sector development projects. All right, now the government has passed a policy that it has allocated billions of rupees to the public sector development project, but who is going to implement it? Of course, representatives of the government. The Prime Minister or the President won't implement it by himself, or neither would the National Assembly or the Senate. It's the government representative sitting in various ministries, the secretaries, the additional secretaries, the deputy secretaries, joint secretaries, and there's a whole bunch of it. It's a big world. They will be the ones who will be implementing it. So when it's about billions of rupees, there is always a chance that you can, since you have the power to release those billions of rupees, there is always a chance that that person who has that power will pursue, if he has a motive, if he has a self motive, then he will pursue it to its maximum to make a maximum gain out of it. So as I said, that wherever there is government, federal or provincial, doesn't matter, or even local, at the local level, whenever it's about the government and the people involved with it, there will always be opportunities for making money, and some people are very good at it. Some people have made billions out of it. And now, as I said, that will, like with most lectures, I'll ask you to read an article. I've given you the web address or the hyperlink, and it's about something that we just talked. It's about the former vice president of the United States and his company, whom he used to serve, and I think he's still serving on it, the Halliburton Group. So do read this article. I'll give you about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Just mind you, just look at the figures, the top figures. There are figures in it about who got the contracts in Iraq in the war, and of how much. And just read the first 5 or 6 paragraphs, not more than that, and jot down a few things, what you find interesting, what we read in the group theory, even the lobby theory, about lobbyists and about elite people. I hope that by this time you've gone through the article, you found the hyperlink. If you haven't, if you're having some technical problems, if you're having difficulties, if you haven't read it, then let me go through, simply go through a few of the basics of the article. What it tells you is that Halliburton, what we talked about in this lecture, it got billions of dollars of contract without following any proper procedures, without following the protocol, without following the laws. And it got billions of dollars of contracts just because they had one of their person in an elite position. He was a public official, the public choice theory, as I just mentioned. So there is a bit of a overlap over here, that there is a public official over here who is pursuing his own self-interest and the self-interest of his group, one of the elite groups, Halliburton. So he is in a position, he is the vice president of the United States, he is in a position to enforce something, to push something, to push a policy, and his policy was to push for war with Iraq, which they did. Now we can see it has ended up as a disaster, but at that time what he was able to do was push that policy of war, a needless war. They spent billions of dollars on it, the American taxpayer. but I'm not sure they still realize that what happened to them. Anyway, what did happen to Halliburton and Dick Cheney was that they earned billions of dollars. There are few people like him that earn millions, but the group was given exclusive right of construction, of other things, of access to oil refineries in Iraq. And I think, I don't remember the figure. Last time I saw the article, I think it was more around $40 billion or more than that, or something a bit less than that. But it's a huge amount for a group to get something like that. Imagine this thing that we in Pakistan are always very happy if we can get even $1 million in our account. And $1 billion is a big thing. So you have this one group, a group of elite people who have one of their representative in a very important public place, and they end up making $40 billion at least. This is just what the government gave them. Their profits, I mean, they are not disclosed, but I'm pretty sure that they are much higher than that. They keep getting the contracts. So what happened over here is that there was a war, there was a public policy that was pushed about war, and that American taxpayers ended up paying for it. But a lot of that money, instead of war, it went to certain elite groups, the interest groups, the lobbyists, and one of them was Halliburton. You just read about it, and I'm sure you're going to, in this course, you're going to encounter many of the many examples like this. Just gave you the example of few of the interest groups over here. But this article, what it demonstrates is another real world example of how an elite group, it maintains its status. It keeps on pushing those policies that harm many people but end up serving them well. The war in Iraq and the total expenditure, which ran in billions of dollars, it hurt the US economy, it hurt the overall welfare of the people, but it ended up giving Halliburton billions of dollars. So as far as the welfare of people at Halliburton and the vice president, the former vice president is concerned, they are well off. Their welfare has increased, but not of the other people, the population. Let's move on to the last topic of this presentation, that is game theory. Oscar Morgenstern and John von Neumann came up with a strategy for games at the time of Second World War. Later it developed into a whole field known as the game theory. ये दूसरे जंग अजीम के वक्त था जब दो मैथमेटिशियंस थे, ऑस्कर मॉर्गनस्टर्न और जॉन वॉन न्यूमन. ये उन्होंने कुछ स्ट्रेटजीज डिज़ाइन की थी, कुछ कि जी, एंड देयर स्ट्रेटजीज वर बेसिकली इन द व्यू दैट लुक, इफ दिस कंट्री डज दिस, then what are we supposed to do? What kind of reaction should we what kind of reaction should we have in response to what the others do? अब इस किस्म की वो strategy डिज़ाइन कर रहे थे. फिर it developed into a whole new set of whole new field. It's called the game theory. Game theory cover होती है बहुत सी fields में. Economics में cover होती है, mathematics में cover होती है. इकोनॉमिक्स में इसकी बहुत एप्लीकेशन है, सोशियोलॉजी में इसकी काफ़ी एप्लीकेशन है, मैथमेटिक्स में इसकी काफ़ी एप्लीकेशन है. तो इट्स अ होल न्यू फील्ड. इट्स जस्ट लाइक पब्लिक चॉइस थ्योरी, इट्स अ सब फील्ड इन इकोनॉमिक्स एंड वेरी वास्ट फील्ड. It is used in many circumstances and in various fields. For example, it is used in conflict studies, diplomatic studies, economics and such sciences where there is more than one player and they are strategizing for a better outcome. अब यहाँ पे भी एक प्लेयर हो सकता है, एक बंदा हो सकता है या एक ग्रुप हो सकता है जो कि एक स्ट्रेटजी बना रहा है. अब वो स्ट्रेटजी बना रहा है किस तनाजुर में, इस तनाजुर में कि उसके मुखालिफ कौन है, या वो किस से ये उम्मीद, ये तवक्को रखता है कि उसकी तरफ से कोई रिएक्शन आएगा. इस तनाजुर में आप देखें तो वो एक स्ट्रेटजी बनाएगा. उसकी स्ट्रेटजी क्या होगी? दैट काइंड ऑफ स्ट्रेटजी, दैट काइंड ऑफ strategizing for gaining a better position in lieu of what others do, the others may be opposers or just friendly groups. It's part of game theory, the study of game theory. In economic, it forms a part of study of duopoly, a situation where two or more firms, organization or setups are dominant and have a monopoly on things. Now, इस चीज़ में हमें जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि क्या चीज़ होती है, इसकी बेसिक्स में जाने की. डुओपली बेसिकली मोनोपली या इजारादारी होती है. ये दो या दो से ज़्यादा फर्म्स की, मोनोपली सिर्फ एक फर्म की इजारादारी होती है. डुओपली की जहाँ पे बात करते हैं हम इकोनॉमिक्स में, वहाँ पे दो या दो से ज़्यादा ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस होगी, फर्म्स होगी, उनकी जो इजारादारी होती है उसको डुओपली कहा जाता है. जब गेम थ्योरी की बात आती है तो उसको इकोनॉमिक्स में कवर किया जाता है ड्यूओपली के अंदर. रिमेंबर वी सेड दैट देयर मस्ट बी a player who is strategizing against other players. So there are two players or more than two players. So it cannot be just a monopoly situation. It has to be a duopoly situation. If we are talking in terms of economics, we're talking in terms of industry. It has to be a duopoly. The participants of the game are dubbed as players. The players of the game are busy in forming a strategy against their opponent and constantly changing it in lieu of the changes made by opponents. Remember that even one of the last lectures I said that everything doesn't remain still. Things change. A lot of things change, and that change leads to a change in the position of other people too, who have a different reaction once the circumstances change. Thus the situation in the games do not remain constant. Until all the players have reached a set decision, it continues on. जब तक एक participants जो होते हैं गेम थ्योरी के, एक particular game के, वो किसी नतीजे पे नहीं पहुंच जाते कि हाँ this is the best I can do given what others are doing, कि ये बेहतरीन मेरी स्ट्रेटजी होगी इस चीज़ के तनाजुर में कि जो और कर रहे हैं, मेरे मुखालिफ हैं या और लोग हैं, जो उनकी स्ट्रेटजी है, मेरी बेहतरीन स्ट्रेटजी ये होगी. जब तक वो अपनी बेहतरीन स्ट्रेटजी पे नहीं आ जाता और अगले जिनसे मद्दे मुकाबिल होते हैं वो भी ये समझते हैं कि हाँ अब मैं भी इधर एक जगह पे पहुंच गया हूँ, ये मेरी बेहतरीन स्ट्रेटजी है, तो उस वक्त तक ये गेम चलती रहती है. रिएक्शन, काउंटर रिएक्शन, देन अनदर काउंटर रिएक्शन. Perhaps we'll go through some examples of it. जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि it's a wonderful theory, it's a wonderful science, and I'll just give you one example to demonstrate how interesting it is and how scary it can be too. There are various forms of games and different games apply to different circumstances. Consider a specific form of the game called game of brinksmanship. I'm sure you would have heard this word, brinksmanship. It's being on the edge, brinksmanship. This kind of game is usually relevant to international diplomatic relations, saber rattling between nations. जब एक दूसरे को धमकियां दे रहे होते हैं, एक दूसरे को आंखें दिखा रहे होते हैं, saber rattling. And where there is a probability of a conflict. जहाँ पे एक कोई probability हो कि एक कोई एक ख़ास मसला जो होता है वो जंग की सूरत इख्तियार कर सकता है. इन चीज़ों को भी गेम थ्योरी कवर करता है. एज आई सेड, इट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग फील्ड. प्राइम एग्जांपल द क्यूबन मिसाइल क्राइसिस 1962. 1962 में क्यूबन मिसाइल क्राइसिस जो हुए थे. इन केस यू हैवंट हर्ड ऑफ इट, इट इज़ वन ऑफ द मोस्ट रेड अबाउट incidents in diplomatic history, in the history of the world, but certainly diplomatic history. What happened was, I'd be very brief. You can read it on the net if you want. If you want to get the details, it was a pretty interesting decision where the world was a pretty interesting incident where the world was on the brink of a nuclear war between Soviet Union and the United States. But in the last minute, the world was saved. Anyway, what happened was that the American spy satellites or the spy planes, they spotted Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. They were attempting, the Soviets were attempting to have some nuclear installations and nuclear missiles. They had already placed a few in Cuba. Once they came to that realization, they were furious because Cuba is just on the south coast of United States. So instead of the Soviet Union being millions of thousands of kilometers away, you had nuclear missiles of an enemy just in your backyard. So that was unacceptable to the United States, and it gave an ultimatum to Cuba, it gave an ultimatum to USSR, and that saber rattling began, and one side said that, look, if you don't do it, we'll do this, and the other side said, if you do this, we will do this. There will be repercussions. So for I think around 13 days or a bit more than that, the world was on a brink. There was a real danger that there would be a nuclear war and humanity would be wiped out, because these are not conventional weapons, these are nuclear weapons, and once a war, God forbid, if it ever happens, then humanity's future is bleak. So we were there in 1962, but thanks God, ultimately it was resolved when the Soviet Union, in this game of brinksmanship, they were the first one to blink, and they said that, all right, we are going to remove the missiles from Cuba, and we are not going to place it there again. So the world averted a disaster in that case. Now that's a part of game theory. Last in the lecture, but not the least, what I have shown you is a typical game theory matrix. It's called a game theory matrix, a payoff matrix. So you can see here in this example that there are, we will certainly discuss other examples too when we go into more technicalities. But as I said, we are just covering the theoretical part of the stuff. So here are two players. One is called yellow, one is called white, and you can see the payoff matrix over here. Now you can see all the probabilities or the payoffs. Payoffs are what are the rewards of a strategy, particular strategy being pursued by both of the players. Now on the top one is suppose just forget about what low and high is, but suppose it's a strategy. So if both sides pursue a low strategy, what are the payoffs for both? It's $120, $120. On the right side of it, if yellow pursues a low policy and white pursues a high policy, what's the payoff? Payoff over here you can see for white is higher than yellow's payoff. It's $160 compared to $50. Now we go to the bottom, and we see that if yellow pursues a high strategy and white pursues a low one, then payoffs change. It's 50-60 but to the reverse, and if both of them pursue a high strategy, they end up sharing $100. So if I may ask you, what do you think? Because remember now there are two players over here, one is yellow, one is white, and they are both pursuing a strategy where they believe they will end up with the maximum. Just look at the matrix. Just look at the matrix. Which one do you think is the best possible for both of them? And you'd see that the best possible for both of them, that gives them the maximum gain, is the top one on the left side. That is the low strategy for both of them, because they end up getting $120 each. If they both pursue a strategy that is otherwise, the payoffs for at least one of them or for both of them are not that much, as in this case of low strategy. So the winning strategy over here for both yellow and white is to pursue the low strategy. That's it for the fourth lecture. So we covered some of the stuff. We covered the remaining theories of the public policy, the remaining models of the public policy, the game theory, the public choice theory, the elite theory, and the other one. So in the end we studied a typical payoff matrix. We went through some examples of elite groups, we went through examples of lobby groups, what they do, how they tend to lobby, what the elites do, how they push a particular policy. So I really hope you enjoyed the lecture. Until next time, goodbye, and hopefully you'll have a nice read. Thank you.